Thanks everybody for joining. This is ClearBlade's ClearLab series, session 5, deploying the ClearBlade Edge. My name is Akash Sharma. I'm an IoT solutions engineer with ClearBlade, which is a company focused on helping its customers build IoT solutions. A couple of things about this video before we start. First of all, as the title implies, this is session 5 of a series. Each of the sessions is a 30-minute session, and there should be videos for sessions 1 through 4 available. If you haven't seen them, I encourage you to watch those and maybe follow the instructions. Then you'll get more out of this one. Secondly, this video is being posted after a live seminar that covered the same topics. There are no questions and answers after this video, as one of the slides implies. And lastly, this version of the video is focused on Windows users. If you're a Mac or Linux user, there should be a version where I complete the same tasks covered in this video, but on a Ubuntu machine, and that may be more appropriate for you. Really, both this and the other video are similar, except for some preliminary setup done in this one for Windows users. So if you're a Mac or Linux user and you don't mind sitting through that, you can absolutely watch this one as well. So let's talk about the system that we've been building, go through our guided development, and as I said, there's no questions and answers. So what we've been building over the last several sessions is a system that acquired, stored, and displayed temperature data. We started off having that temperature data come from an endpoint published by the National Weather Service, but we said that we eventually wanted to get to the following end goal. We wanted that temperature data to originate at a temperature sensor mounted on some asset that was important for our business. The temperature sensor would be connected to an analog input of some gateway device, something like a Raspberry Pi. That gateway device would be running some code written in some common language, Python, Go, Node, something of that nature. And that code would pass that temperature information up to our system in the cloud, where we would receive it, store it, display it, analyze it, and so on. Last session, we took a very big step toward that goal when we had some external Python code, external meaning it was not running in our platform in the cloud, but it was running external to it, but it would connect to the platform, more specifically to the broker in the platform, as an MQTT client. And it would publish temperature data to a topic. Meanwhile, we had a stream service running in our system in the cloud that would subscribe to the same topic, receive the data, store it to a collection, and that would update a portal widget. That Python code was running on our computers, but it could very well have been running on something like a Raspberry Pi, and then we would have been very close to our desired end goal. One thing to keep in mind is, in that case, the Python MQTT client was directly connected to the MQTT broker in the cloud, and as long as there was a stable internet connection between the two, everything worked fine. If the internet connection was to drop, the Python code would probably crash. At best case, we would lose some data. And at worst case, we might have a catastrophic failure, especially if the Python code also controlled some equipment on that asset. So it could be that we need to mitigate for these network disconnections if we cannot tolerate those kinds of events. That's where we need our gateway device to go from being just a relayer of data back and forth to a true edge device. An edge device would relay data, but it would also function autonomously as a self-contained unit. Our ClearBlade Edge makes it very easy to turn a gateway device into an edge device. Here's the definition of the ClearBlade Edge from our docs. I'm not going to read all of it, but I'm going to read some important parts of it. It says ClearBlade Edge is an application to synchronize, configure, manage, and deploy IoT systems. So first of all, it's an application. It's software installed on this gateway device. Second, it is designed to perform well on a constrained hardware platform, so something like a Raspberry Pi. And third, the Edge contains all the same features of the ClearBlade platform and is designed to be deployed in remote networks. So you will see that the Edge is really a miniature replica of the system in the cloud. By the end of this session, we will have deployed one Edge, and in the process, we would have created one deployment. And what a deployment is will become clear as we go through it. And we will have created a very simple adapter. Now, an adapter traditionally is a piece of code that runs external to our platform, runs on the edge, and does something like protocol translation. It reads data, for example, from a Modbus server, and then publishes that data to an MQTT topic. Well, we have our Python code that we used last session, and we're going to essentially continue using it with some modifications, but we're going to deploy it the way we would deploy an adapter. And you'll see what we mean when we come to that point as well. All right, so at the end of this session, we will have deployed an edge, created a deployment, and we would have deployed an adapter. So with all that, let's start building. Now, attached to this video, you should see some contents, and I'm going to access those contents from a page that would have been made available through an email that was sent inviting people to the live session. So everything that I'm finding from this page should be attached to this video. For example, I need these instructions, installing pip for Python 3 instructions. Those should be available attached to your video. I'm going to right click and open this link in a new tab. Same thing here. MQTT client user device underscore s5.py, s5 for session 5. I right click, open that link in a new tab. You should have access to that somewhere attached to this video as well. Now with those done, let's take a step back and let's talk about the ClearBlade Edge. This is an application that has been built to run on different versions of Linux or Mac OS. It is not built to run on Windows. But here I'm using a Windows machine. How am I going to get the ClearBlade Edge to run over here? Well, ever since Windows 10 was introduced, or shortly thereafter, Microsoft has been slowly introducing a feature of Windows 10 called the Windows Subsystem for Linux. This used to be an insider feature, but it has become more and more mainstream. And that's what I'm going to use today. So I'd like you to click on the start icon and type turn or turn Windows features on or off. Go there, scroll to the bottom, pretty near the bottom of this list of features, and hopefully you see Windows Subsystem for Linux. If you do, what I want you to do is to check that, click OK. You will be asked to restart your system. At that point, you should pause this video, go ahead, restart your system, and pick back up with the video after it has restarted. Now, if you don't have this option or it has been disabled for some reason, then unfortunately, you are going to need a Linux virtual machine, VM, or something like a Raspberry Pi, and then you would need to interface with those with PuTTY. So you would not be able to use the Windows Subsystem for Linux, of course. But assuming you do have this, let's go ahead and continue. I'm going to cancel because I already have it installed. Now, assuming you have installed that, what you need next is a distro, a Linux distro to run on top of the Windows Subsystem for Linux, or WSL as I'll call it from now on. There are various distros. Some popular ones are Ubuntu and Debian, and there are several others, and you can find them presented as Windows or Microsoft Store apps. So I'm going to type, from the start icon, I'm going to type Microsoft Store, click there, search for Ubuntu, There's a few of these. I'm going to use 18.0 for LTS long-term stable. That's the one that I have used most. I think any of them would work, but I'm going to go ahead with this. I'm going to click on install, and that's going to take a little bit of time to install. So while that installs, I'll go ahead and take my, that was faster than I expected, but I will copy the Python code that we just opened up in the tab. By the way, that also should be attached to your video somewhere. And I'm going to paste that Python code in a new file. I'm using my code editor, VS Code, use any code editor you prefer. Paste that, and I'd like to save my Python file. Doesn't really matter where I save it, but I'll save it with this name, temperature adapter .py. You don't have to use that exact name, but there's a reason I'm using the word adapter in the name. I'm saving it. Go ahead and do the same, and we'll come back to this. But at this point, since our Ubuntu app has been installed, let's launch it. So click on the start icon, type in Ubuntu. There it is. I'm going to right click on there, pin to taskbar, and I have it right here. And I'll just click, and it brings up the app. It's going to take us a few minutes to get set up. And when it is, I'm going to type in my username for this Unix system. And then I will type in my Unix password. And I'll do that again. Great. So this is a very minimal version or install of Ubuntu, but it does come with Python 3. So if I type in Python 3, you can try this with me. Python 3.6.9 has been installed. Exit, open, close to get out of there. But then if I try to install a Python module using pip, pip 3 install ClearBlade, to install the ClearBlade pip module, it says pip 3 not found. It can be installed. So before we do that, let's actually run sudo app update. That's one of the commands. If you went to how to install pip on Ubuntu 18.04, it'll tell you first thing you want to do is sudo apt update to update several packages, Ubuntu and Linux packages. Do that first. I do have to enter my password. And it's going to take a second. And once that is done, then we can type in sudo apt install python 3-pip. That installs pip, which is the tool you use to install Python modules that are curated through the Python package manager, essentially. So once that has been installed, then we can install the ClearBlade Python module. Now, while this is installing, I will mention that this app gives me command line access to Ubuntu. So I have a terminal, but this doesn't provide the graphical user interface, the desktop, or any of that. But that's still very, very valuable. So once that has completed, then I can up arrow a few times and find the command for installing the ClearBlade Python module. Click enter. And this module contains classes that the Python code that we were just looking at needs to use to function. Okay, so once that's installed, let's just go ahead and leave that aside, and let's continue with our Python code, and simultaneously, let's go back to our browser and very carefully open a new tab and go to platform.clearblade.com. So go ahead and log in or register. You don't need a registration key, but you need all this other information. Go ahead and log in. And if you have your own temperature monitor system down here, built all the way through to the end of session 4, then you can continue using it. If you haven't completed all the instructions through at the end of session 4, maybe rename your existing one to temperature monitor in progress. And you should find attached to this video the completed system from the end of session 4. I have it available in that page that I pointed out. I'm going to click here to download the zip file, go back to my console home, add system, from file, browse to the one that I just downloaded. I don't need to extract the contents of the zip. And I have my system as it was at the end of session 4. A couple of things I'm going to do right off the bat. I'm going to go to devices. There's a device in there. I'm going to select that and delete one row. I'm actually going to recreate that device as we go through here. Next, I'll go to users, click on the gear icon, settings, change password, and I'll put in a password that I recognize or remember. You should do the same. Click update. Then I'm going to go to the portals, click on temperature monitor portal, log in with that user that was in our system. And now I have my portal ready to use. I'm going to go back to the console here, and I'm going to duplicate this tab, and you'll understand why as we start looking at our edge. So I'm going to right click here and duplicate this tab. Now we're going to modify this Python code to be ready to run as an adapter. So let's go ahead and see what needs to be changed. When you look through this Python code, you'll see that it's very similar to what we used last week with a couple of differences. Something that's the same, we need a system key. You can get that by going to the system home here, click on the gear icon, scroll down, system key, copy that. And system secret, copy that. Save. So with the system key, the system secret, and the URL, we can initialize a variable that's basically our connection to our system. Now, one thing that's different from what we saw last week right off the bat, last week our URL was platform.clearblade.com. This time our URL is 127 or http://127.0.0.1. That's very different. That makes sense because 127.0.0.1 means localhost or this computer. We have this code that's going to run on a gateway device, and it wants to connect to a system that's also on that gateway device running within our ClearBlade Edge. So the Edge requires this Python code to connect through port 9000, so we have that there. And a couple of things that I'll point out. You'll see that this is HTTP rather than HTTPS. First of all, for this to be HTTPS, I can't use an IP address. I would need uh, an actual domain or a URL based on a domain. This is not going to be running most likely within the ClearBlade domain, so we don't really have access um, to that domain to create a domain name record, something that would map this to some user-friendly, logical URL. So for that reason, this has to be HTTP. Another reason is since this would be running within a domain that's outside of the ClearBlade domain, whoever is kind of the administrator for that domain would be responsible for generating a TLS cert and a key, and all of that could be done, but it's just extra work. So for now, we're just going to have the connection from this Python code to our system on the edge be unencrypted. And that's okay because, once again, this is running on the same machine as the system is, so the communication is not going across any network. Now, let's go ahead and create our device, and we need the device key. So go ahead and go to Devices, Add Device, call it the same thing we call it in the Python code, device-1. Here's a key given to us. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to paste it here. Create, update roles, save that. Okay. And once again, down here, I have an MQTT client object that's been created, and it is connecting to our MQTT broker that's local, not up in the cloud, but on the same edge. So we're connecting to the broker at 127.0.0.1. And once again, we're using unencrypted communication. Use TLS is false. And you may recall port 1884 is for encrypted and 1883 for unencrypted. And once again, since the Python code and the broker, so the Python code, which is the MQTT client, and the broker are both on the same physical device, there's no network traffic, and unencrypted communication is a little bit less of a concern. Okay. So with all that done, before we run this code, let's go ahead and create our edge. So I want you to go to the console, go to Edges, Add Edge. Let's call it First Edge. Create. Now, you'll see that there's a setup instructions link that pops up. Let's click that. And the first question is, where is this edge running? Where are we deploying the ClearBlade Edge application? If I click on this dropdown, you see Darwin, Linux, and several options. Darwin is OS X, Mac, but my Ubuntu app is basically Linux x86-64. I'll pick that. I'm going to pick the install command for just the edge. The console is essentially an application that acts as a web server, so that everything that I see when I go to platform.clearblade.com, I can see the version of it within the edge by going to directly to the gateway device. I don't want to do that. I can actually access the contents of the edge from up here. All I really want is the edge itself. So I'm going to go ahead and copy the install command. I'm going to go to the Ubuntu app and paste it. Right click will do it. Enter. And apparently I've got my Edge installed. Then the next thing I need to do is to start it up. Down here, I have a startup command for the Edge. I can mouse over here, go to the copy, click, and I'm going to right click and enter. You're going to see a bunch of stuff happen here. And here's the ClearBlade ASCII art, and that tells you that things worked. Now, if I go back to this Edges page, connected says not connected. Well, let's go ahead and refresh. Right click, reload. Now it says connected. So I definitely did connect to this edge. Okay. So at this point, I have a tab that's pointed to our console. And then this tab, when I mouse over here and click, and I log in to the edge using the same credentials that I used to log in to the platform. And now I am looking at the system within the edge. This color lets me know I'm looking within the edge. Here, I'm looking at the console, the platform console, I should say. Here, I'm looking inside the edge. And so you can see there's some commonality. You've got the components here that seem to match what was in the cloud. Okay, so now I'm going to do something that will be fairly expected. So I'm going to close this window. I'm going to kill this Ubuntu app. Now, if I go to my edges here, this is back to being disconnected. And in fact, if I try to go and look at anything here, I'm going to get a bunch of errors. Basically, it says the edge has disappeared. And that's okay. That's kind of what we expected. So I'm going to go ahead and close this. And this time, I will launch the Ubuntu app and up arrow to get the same command I ran before to start the edge running. This time, I'll prefix the command with no hup, N-O-H-U-P. And then the edge will run and doesn't need this terminal window to be open. But then you just have to remember that you will have to explicitly kill the edge application if you so desired. Once this computer also shuts down, that will obviously stop the edge running. And if the computer comes back up, it doesn't automatically restart the edge or anything of that sort. So this is really a development setup. You don't want to run the edge within one of these Linux distro apps as part of some production system. It's really just for development. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. And then if I go back here, right click, reload, you'll see that I am connected. Now I can close that and I can reload. I am still connected. Okay, let me make sure I have so let me go ahead and duplicate this tab. And then I will click here. And now I'm inside the edge. But I don't have any components. I don't have any services, libraries, collections, nothing. So I'm going to start putting together the components that are in the platform in the cloud that also need to be available on the edge. I'm going to go back to my console tab. First thing I'll do is I'll go to adapters. I'm going to take this Python code and treat it as an adapter. Once again, an adapter is a piece of code that runs on an edge, and it does something like translation. It would take data that's coming from a sensor and turn it into MQTT traffic. And that's what this is. This is very much doing something like that. So I will click on Add Adapter. I'll call it my temperature adapter. How you understand this name that I created? It's going to be running on x86 Linux, x86 64-bit. Create. Now here's an adapter that I created. And what that does is it provides a mechanism for deploying this to the gateway device, maybe starting it, stopping it, getting logs, all sorts of things. But we're going to do very little today with this adapter. I'm going to click in there, and we're going to ignore everything down here for today. I'm going to go up here to set up adapter configuration, import files, browse to where this Python file is, which happens to be in C. Right there, temperature adapter. Pick that, update the adapter. Great, I have this ready to deploy. Now I need to deploy it. So what I need is a deployment. I'm going to click on deploy, and I'm going to click on add deployment. So a deployment is the mechanism for syncing up things that are in the platform in the cloud to the edge and vice versa. So I will call this my first edge deploy. Create. And I will pick the things that need to be deployed. First of all, I have a device 1 that's up here. Well, this Python code is going to connect as device 1, but it's going to connect to the broker on the edge. So the broker on the edge needs to know about that device. So I'll click here, and I'll say I want to sync the devices from the platform to the edge. So sync to edge. Next, I have an adapter that I just created, and I again need to sync that to the edge. Third, I have services, and I have a stream service called log temperatures. Well, think about it. This guy's going to publish MQTT data. It's going to publish to an MQTT topic, this one. Who's going to subscribe to it? Well, it's got to be log temperatures, but this guy's talking to the broker on the edge, so I need log temperatures, the stream service, to run on the edge as well. So I'm going to go ahead and pick sync to edge for that one. Don't really have any libraries. That's something that we will come back and create in another session. Collections. This is an interesting one. So the stream service log temperatures needs to save that data to a collection. What it will do is it will save it to a collection that's local to the edge, but we want that data to also be synced up to the collection in the cloud as it is available. So this one is going to be synced to platform. Finally, we have a user. I don't recall if we're going to need this user for anything, but I'm going to sync that one to the edge as well. It doesn't hurt to have the user available. We do have a portal, but we're not going to look at the portal directly on the edge, so we will leave that. And then finally, where are we going to sync all of these to this edge? So I'm going to go ahead and check first edge. At this point, I'm going to say save and exit. Now let me go back to the edge, and you recall I was seeing 0 services, 0 collections, 0 users, and so on. Well, now that I saved my deployment, I'm going to right-click here, reload. Now you're going to see I have 1 service, I have 1 collection, I have 1 user, and so on. Great. Let's go ahead and go to the services, log temperatures, go to the advanced tab. It's not running. Go to code editor, save and exit, go back to the advanced tab, refresh. Now I have 1 instance of log temperatures running, and Keep remembering, this is running on the edge. You can tell by this brownish green color, colored banner at the top of the page that I'm looking at. Okay, so I've got my stream service running, subscribing to this topic and ready to receive. Well, I need this Python code to run at this point. So we're going to start the Python code in kind of a rudimentary way. I'm going to launch the Ubuntu app again, and I'm going to list the contents of my home folder. And in there, I've got something called adapters. Let me change to that folder. And in there, I have a folder for my temperature adapter. Let me change to that. And there I have my Python code. I'm going to just launch it with Python 3, temperature adapter.py, and I'm going to get ready watching my portal. And as soon as I run this, I better see data show up within my portal. So let's think about what's happening. This Python code is running, this adapter is running on my gateway device, essentially running as part of my edge. It's talking to the MQTT broker on the edge, publishing to a topic. I have a stream service running again on the edge, subscribing to the same topic, receiving the data, saving it to a collection on the edge. But that collection on the edge is synced up to the collection in the system in the cloud platform, is how we usually refer to that. And that collection in the platform is the data source for this portal widget. And so as soon as that collection in the cloud gets synced to the collection on the edge, that new data immediately shows up in the portal. Very good. That was the goal of this exercise. We now have our Edge, the ClearBlade Edge, running in a Windows app that runs on top of the Windows subsystem for Linux. Now, as soon as this stops, in fact, I'm going to go ahead and stop it. I'll go ahead and stop that. I will say that the ClearBlade Edge is running, and as you know, just by closing this window, it's not going to stop it running. In fact, it was running within a different window. How do I stop that? Well, I could shut the computer down, but if I wanted to find a way to stop it, I have to run this command, ps-aux to grep ClearBlade. So basically, I'm trying to find any processes running that refer to ClearBlade in the name. The second one is actually that command that I just ran. The first one is what I care about. So apparently, there is a process with process ID 35 that was that Edge startup command. So I'm going to go ahead and kill it. So I'm going to say kill 35. And in fact, you will see, as soon as I do that, that if I go and I try to do something there, and go to services. Huh. Yeah. I guess I just need to reload. If I reload, I will see, I should see, oh yeah, I'm already out of the edge. So yes, the edge is definitely killed, and that's what I expected. Hopefully this was helpful. I encourage you to continue following these sessions, and hope you get a chance to use ClearBlade to build your IoT solutions. If you have any questions, do contact us. Thank you very much.